Back with another episode of the Leaders of Leaders podcast. I've got an incredible guest today. I've got Wes Woodhouse. He is first and foremost a servant of God, husband, father, marathon runner, and fighter pilot. This is the second fighter pilot, guys. We better be careful. we'll get all of the militaries soon here. So his mission is to build up the next generation of leaders armed to take on the dynamic challenges of the attention age. In 2020, he founded Vector Atlas, a leadership development and attention cultivation agency. Attention cultivation agency. If there is not a more needed item, skill, soft skill, hard skill, whichever way you can run that, I think that would be it. And so let's jump into that right after. I just want to, obviously we're unapologetically followers of Christ here on Leaders of Leaders podcast. I know you're a servant of God. So how did you come to know Christ?
First off, Aaron, thanks for having me here. I'm glad to be here, and I can't wait to get into it. How did I become a servant of Christ? I was blessed growing up with two parents who were believers. And so, all throughout my childhood, we were going to church. Our church met in a school, so helped set up the chairs in the morning and tear them down. And after the service was done, and we had family worship in the evening and all that. It was at a Bible summer camp that we went to as a family in Michigan that there was my brothers and I've got 5 other siblings. But 2 brothers, my brothers and I, we played baseball all growing up. We loved the sport. We loved the Chicago Cubs. And so at this Bible camp, there was a morning session that was led by a couple of former MLB players who were also believers. And they would come and they would lead a little session for helping to train up some of the kids, and the parents were there helping and everything, and how to hone the skills of playing baseball. And at the end, they would always do a devotional and talk about what it means to be a believer in the workplace or in sports or in whatever it was. It changed. And then they, did the standard, anybody want to raise their hand and commit their lives to Christ. At that point, I was 9 or 10 at the time. And so pretty young. And there was a lot of growth that had to happen, from that point on in my walk as a believer, and certainly going to college and being off on my own. And then, as you know, and I'm sure a lot of the listeners know, being in the military and any type of workplace today, there's challenges, and there's times where your faith is going to be challenged. And so really learning and developing to root myself in scripture, really, and in my faith. It's been a growing journey, but that is where it all started.
That's awesome. And so is it a particular denomination or non-denominational, the church?
I would non-denominational is the type of churches that I've grown up going to, and we still go to.
Yeah. So like evangelical, non-denominational.
Correct. Yeah. I think our current church here in Las Vegas is affiliated with the Southern Baptist conglomerate, or whatever it's called. But essentially, Bible believing, non-denominational.
Yeah. And that's I think that's a typical evangelical church now,
right.
Quasi rooted in Baptistic, sort of doctrine and understanding, right. But a little bit more, a lot of times they tend to be a little bit more seeker friendly, if you will, in their service, but still rooted, deeply in the doctrine that comes from that sort of Baptistic root. Cool. So this whole, and so that being said, obviously, one, you're a product of what I'm trying to do with my family, right? With this whole ideas of leaders. We believe that Jesus Christ is the leader of all leaders, King of all kings, ruler of all rulers, Lord of all lords, right? And so if I'm rooting my children through training, teaching, equipping, correcting, right, in scripture, and specifically in the understanding of who Christ is and why that is so important for life, truly, literally everlasting life, eternal life. it's obviously possible that children don't have to be like me and rebel and fall away and end up in, their own semblance of hell before they can, realize, oh, dang, maybe I don't have to be a nihilistic reject. Maybe there is such a thing as objective morality. There is such a thing as objective truth. There is such a thing as making good decisions, which brings me to the, all choices have consequences. So it brings me to that attention cultivation. I think a lot of times we are just making subconscious choices, not even thinking that they're choices, because a screen is in front of us, and how much more devastating that is for kids, young adults, 20 stupid year olds, as I would like to call them, because I was one myself, maybe the worst of the 20 stupid year olds. But then moreover, the teenager, the adolescent, and then even more the child. And obviously the studies are pretty clear now, in terms of anxiety, depression, all of that, when it comes to spending too much time on a screen, even if it's educational, right? Which it's obviously it's a tool. So tell me, where did this idea of leadership development, I can understand, but attention cultivation, and specifically the attention cultivation agency, where did that stem from? Why are you doing that? Why are you fighting an uphill battle?
That's what it is, an uphill battle. And that is a lot of the reason that I think it's necessary right now, because everything else is going in the downhill direction. And so, I mean, because leader of leaders, they're going to need to be the first one or two or three or four who start going in the uphill direction and forging the way. The classic video of the one guy dancing in the middle of a whole bunch of people, and he's out there for a full minute or something before the first follower goes into the middle of the ring, and then after that it's an absolute avalanche. That's what I'm hoping for. I don't know if I'll quite get there, but one can hope. So back in, I believe it was 2018, I began following James Clear's concept of coming up with a annual theme to kind of cage what that year is going to look like for you, and point you in the direction of what type of growth you want to see in your life. And so I decided that my theme was going to be 100% focus on the person or task at hand. And the reason is because I was finding myself just, being distracted, and I'd even be having a conversation with somebody at work or with my wife or whoever it was, and they're distracted at different points, and I'm distracted at different points. The cell phone buzzes and dings and vibrates and, grabs your attention, and there's 4 new notifications, and then all of a sudden it derails your human to human conversation, as well as just getting work done. There's a lot of studying that happens in the fighter aviation world. And so, having the skill to sit down and read through a document, sometimes they're boring, sometimes they're not boring, but sit there and actually consume and ingest and have the information that you're reading for good reason soak in. And so that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to make sure that I was, vectoring my mind in a way that would be less distracted and be able to be more present, 100% focus on the person or task at hand, whichever one it was. And so all throughout the year, I kept coming back to that. I, wrote it on stickies, and I had it in different locations that I would see periodically. So I was kind of always snapping back to 100% focus on the person or task at hand. And at the end of the year, honestly, if you asked me on December 31st, 2018, well, Wes, how did the year go, and how did your theme go? I would have said, you know what? I think it was generally good, but I don't know that there was a whole lot that I actually improved. And I think I did a lot because it was incremental improvements, the 1% every day type of, again, a James Clear thing. But the mentality of incremental improvements over time is gonna aggregate to meaningful gains. So fast forward a couple years, I had had a couple iterations of a different theme, generally all kind of in the same vein, but never as specific in the attention kind of realm as the the 2018 100% focus on the person or task at hand. Well, later on, as I'm reading books and listening to podcasts, it's becoming clear that the more technology is proliferating everyday life and society, the less people are able to actually pay attention. And it is payment of attention. Right now, I'm paying you my attention because I could choose to be doing something else. But right now, I am paying you my time in the form of my attention to this conversation. And you and the listeners are paying me your attention right now and their attention right now. So it is a transaction, which is also an interesting concept. But the more I learn about, say that again?
I said an investment even.
Yes, that's a great way to look at it as well. Yes.
Yeah.
So as I'm kind of ruminating on this concept, I'm realizing here we are in an age where collective attention of society is continually going down as the multi-billion-dollar companies, Google, Apple, all the Facebook, all those, are spending more and more money on finding better and better ways to grab our attention and rip it away from whatever it was on and pull it into the app or website or whatever it is and just keep you there. And we've all been there. I mean, like, heck, just the other day, I go on Instagram because somebody was like, oh, I sent you an IM of a link or something. I'm like, oh, I want to grab that link. 20 minutes later, I haven't even grabbed the link because I'm just scrolling. And I'm the attention guy. So
did you find the bottom of Instagram? I'm just curious.
No, it doesn't exist. But so as the collective attention is incrementally going down, the need for solid attention is only increasing in the workplace, in the family. I mean, talking about what you were talking about, raising our kids as an example, being a witness as an example, but then also trying to teach them how to live and how to grow up and become an adult in our society today, where there's so many challenges. It's tough. And so the need for the ability to pay attention is increasing at the same time that it's that in actuality it's decreasing. So it's causing this attention gap. And from that kind of concept is where I think we are very clearly, we have already shifted out of the information age where value was in the generation and storage and then dissemination of information. And now we are in a time where value is in the attention. Let's think in industry. Google. I'm Google, and I need to hire some people to further my goals. I'm going to find the people who have the ability to sit down at a project and get that project done and gather the information required to get that project done. I'm not looking for somebody who's going to, sit down at the desk and then scroll Instagram at my Google desk. That's not what they're looking for. So there's a bit of a gap. And I mean, with AI coming out and all this, I think it is even more necessary for attention now that we're, well into the kind of AI revolution, because when a piece of technology is able to execute the rote skills that even people 50 years ago weren't even imagining that they themselves could do, it is even more necessary for us to have the presence of mind and to put into place the habits and the environment and to build the lifestyle that's conducive to us paying attention to whatever it is, the conversation, parenting our kids. Like, how many times have we gone to the park and seen the parents just on the cell phone while the kids are running around, throwing wood chips at each other? Yeah.
Well, I love that idea of paying attention as, I'm actually paying into your interaction, your conversation, your whatever. I just automatically thought of it's even like an investment because we can have compounding interest in that investment. specifically and especially with our kids, and I can kind of rope that back to, you know, what's the one thing, or what's a couple of things that your parents. I have a couple of questions here. We'll see if we can even get through these, because this is good. This is incredible. And real quick, on an aside, have you read Deep Work by Cal Newport?
I have. Yes. Phenomenal book.
I think that even supersedes, overrides what James Clear says. James Clear's, the way he does stuff, it's like so simple. I mean, Deep Work, I guess, is really simple, because it's just like, pay attention to the thing you're doing for a long period of time.
Right.
Do it more. Go.
But I think, and that, the thing I like about that book is it's do that, but set up the environment that you can.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And James Clear, I think, has a lot of good practicalities for that. Real quick then, if we are going to talk James Clear, Cal Newport a little bit, do you think that either of those guys are believers?
Ooh. I couldn't say with Cal Newport. I think that's the only book that I've read of him, and I have not consumed any other content.
Yeah.
I don't know about James Clear. I would, my gut would say no, but I don't think I would be, blown away if he was.
Yeah. But the believer that does such a good job of disguising that they're a believer, I always question that believing.
That's true. Yes, that's valid.
Yep. But it doesn't mean that, God didn't create these incredible human beings to bring forth incredible value. I mean, we have Xerxes, and we have Caesar, and we have all these other kings of entire nations that actually, in some respects, obviously hurt and rebelled against God, but also helped tremendously with our own human development and whatnot. Okay, so that being said, then going back to, what do you think the one, and I made that little kind of touch to, as I realized that more attention that I pay to my kid, even if it seems like worthless attention, it seems that we have a much better relationship. They listen to me more. And granted, I'm I think a pretty consistent disciplinarian, and discipline in the training sense of the term, but also discipline in the punitive consequence sense of the term. I think it's a both and. A lot of people think about the punitive consequence only, but it's like, no, it's training, it's consistency. And so I think that has a lot to do with it. But again, that's still an investment of time, right? To have to do that. It's way easier
sometimes
to just
a lot of time.
I'm gonna find what's on Instagram and ignore this crazy child. So what do you think the one thing, if you could boil it down to one thing, and if not, then two or three or whatever it is, that your parents did that helped? Because obviously you're not a slouch. You went to university, you did well there, well enough at least to be in the top tier of, I mean, fighter pilot is it's not an easy feat for any. It's like trying to get into the NFL or something like that, right? I mean, a lot of people want to do it. Most people just get stuck not even taking that first step. A lot of other people take that first step and realize how hard it is, stop. But you took all the steps, and that's on 100-mile journey that people are stopping on step 1 and 2, right? What do you think and then obviously you're not an unclear thinker, and you're a believer. What do you think the one thing your parents did, if you could boil it down? And I know maybe this is catching you off guard.
No, I 100% can boil it down. And partially because I just had a conversation with my dad, not exactly on this, but it touched on it. So I'm coming up to a kind of a career decision-making point, and I was talking to my dad on his advice and what he would think, and had he been in the same spot, back when I was 4 years old, which is the age of my oldest daughter, what decision would he choose, and how would he kind of think about that? And his big thing was he was self-employed and could determine his own schedule very largely, and was able to just take vacation whenever he wanted. He coached, I think, every single baseball game that I ever played was there at the field. Most soccer games, most games for my younger siblings as well. And this was over. I mean, I was in the house playing sports.
And again, you have a big family.
Yes, I have 5 siblings. Yeah.
Big, right? North Idaho,
Big,
not big for
correct.
North Idaho, but big.
Fair.
Big for California.
Big,
Big
yeah,
for Vegas.
big for Chicago, definitely.
That's right.
Um,
Yeah.
so so his big thing was time, and I said, do you regret that at all? Having in a lot of ways traded potential career progression and money making opportunity for being home, I mean, really every single night that we had dinner and went to bed and whatnot, and then being there for all of our activities growing up, sports and otherwise. And he said no, and then he said, in fact, if there's anything I do regret, it's missing any of it. The very little bit that and I was like, you did not miss any of it.
Yeah.
And so I think just, I mean, going back to attention, that was him paying attention to me.
Yeah.
By being
Just
there.
being there. Yeah.
Yeah. Being there at every
Wow.
single game.
Mm-hmm.
And not only being there, but coaching.
Yeah.
Being there for all the different activities, not spending, I mean, how it is in the military. We travel a fair bit for our job and sometimes have to go serve overseas as both you and I have for many, many months at a time. And so you're gone from your wife, and that takes a tax on the marriage, and you're gone from your kids, and that takes a tax on your father to child relationship and your ability to influence how they're going to grow and what they're going to grow up into and all that. And so, hearing him say that, I think with clarity that is the probably single biggest, and that encompasses a lot, because obviously tied up into that, he was, all of the mentorship that was going on in there. But I think the biggest thing was the fact that he was always present. We had every single dinner around the dinner table at night, and he was there for everything. And we went on, some good lengthy, multi-week vacations around the country, and got to see a lot of God's creation in this beautiful country. And so he was there. I think just the time that he was spending, and in that, the attention that he was paying to me and my siblings and my mom.
Yeah, I was gonna say. So there it is. I was gonna say. I said parents. You said father, and I think but I think there is something to that, right? And obviously you're a son, so there is this father son, and a lot of times, and I think right now we have a world where there's a ton of boys being raised by moms, and we wonder why they haven't turned into men yet, and they're 40 years old and they're still acting like boys, and so being present, man, that's huge. And the fact that you defaulted to your father, and you talked about your father throughout the whole thing, and obviously that's not to somehow demote your mom or something like that, but the father's presence is so important. And I know there's a ton of guys that are listening to this that are going to be fathers, are currently fathers right now, or maybe, they have kids that are about to leave the house or have even left the house. And I don't think they have to, I mean, they can regret it, sure, and they can feel shame and guilt, but then they can go to Christ, be forgiven, repent of that, and then they can still be present, right? Even afterwards. I mean, obviously your father's still present, and he's helping you make a pretty gnarly, career decision. Right. At least that's what it seemed. Maybe I got that wrong.
No,
gnarly might not be the word.
That is accurate. Yeah.
Cool, man. So that's good. So then let's jump into, do you believe that? So I see social media and these phones and all this stuff as a tool, much like I see a hammer as a tool. So the hammer can be used to build a house. It can be used to kill somebody, right? A gun, same thing. Like, it could be used to do harm to bad people, or to keep bad people from doing harm to good people. There's this, it's a tool. That's the way I see it. At the same time, I can't deny the statistics. And so my question is actually one of Christ, obedience to Christ. Is the algorithm, and I say that very generally as a singular thing. Obviously, there's multiple algorithms on multiple platforms, and in even single, platforms and softwares and whatever. But has this tool now, or the way in which this tool is largely used, a usurpation of God? Is it idolizing so much so as to literally usurp our obedience from God if we are believers, and or literally get us to worship something else besides God? And I know that's pretty powerful, a pretty powerful question, but I am curious. I do think about that, and I don't have maybe necessarily a clear answer, my take or whatever. But I'd be curious as to yours, because you're attention cultivating agency, right?
Yeah, Aaron, there's a lot to unpack there, and I don't think I've come up with a fully thought out answer to that, but we'll give it a shot.
Yeah, right.
So I think the first kind of parallel that popped into my mind is soda. Way back when soda was first invented and whatnot, there was a bit of an element of, this is a fun drink and it's going to help you stay hydrated and everything, and it is a tool. And now, with the beverages that have caffeine, there is a positive use to caffeine. There's plenty of studies that have shown that caffeine is good for, it's all dependent on your use, I guess is what I'm getting at.
That's
but
right. Mm-hmm.
But for somebody, I don't drink caffeine every single day, and so then when there's a time where I'm like, hey, I should drink some caffeine, I'll drink caffeine and I'll get a positive use out of it. There's positive uses for brain health, obviously for performance if it's used in the correct way, but it is very addictive and is very easy to abuse. And because caffeine gives soda the feedback loop of, I drink soda, I feel good. I drink more soda, I feel better. I keep drinking soda. Now I just have to keep drinking soda just to even feel okay.
Normal. Yeah.
And then, it spirals down, but it's a relatively slow spiral. So you don't really see it spiraling down as it's beginning. And then you wake up 5 years later and you are not who you used to be. And you can't climb the stairs without huffing and puffing. And you've lost your manly physique. I think it's very similar with social media. Again, going back to Instagram, I came across the pastor of the church that the rest of my family goes to in Illinois, and I think it was a portion of one of his sermons, and I watched through the whole thing, and it was very, very good, and it set my mind spiritually in a much better place than I had been previously, and caused me to think about, yes, that is true. God has made promises and he keeps his promises. And the reason that we can continue to trust in God keeping his promises is that he has never broken a promise before. It was something to that effect.
Yeah.
And I would say that was a very positive experience / value absorbed from social media in that moment.
Right. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, then the way that the apps are designed, it's so easy just to go whoop and scroll down, just a little bit, and then boom, we're right back at it. And it's the dopamine producing
feedback loop,
spiral that they've designed specifically to grab us and to keep us. So coming back to the way that you phrased it, I think that's really good, is that social media is a tool, and just like a hammer, if I give my hammer to my 4-year-old and she starts running around with it, bad things are going to happen to the house and possibly to her and definitely to her sister, and maybe to me too.
Yeah, that's right.
But if I say, go grab daddy, bring me my hammer because I need to pound in this nail, and then I use the tool appropriately and she uses the tool appropriately, then we have gained value out of having that tool. And then what do we do afterwards? We put it back on the shelf, and now it's there for next time we need it. And with the way that I think being, and I am saying this, and now I'm thinking about that I need to be better about this, but being very conscientious about maintaining our social networks and making sure that we're only following the content that we want to follow, garbage in, garbage out, value, positive, good, constructive value in, that's what'll come out. But then it's even more so, I can bang a nail into the piece of wood, but then if I just keep banging on it and never stop banging on it, now I've destroyed the piece of wood. Now it's no longer good. So what was a good thing can very easily turn into a bad thing. And that is specifically the way that these apps and social media has been designed. And really, I mean, everything it doesn't matter. It's most companies are out there to make a profit. And so they're going to construct their product in a way that is going to try to get you to keep coming back. Not most products are not addictive, like soda or social media. So I think it is a lot of in the way that you go about it, whether or not it is, I can't remember how you phrased it, but in defiance to God or
idolizing or usurpation of God's presence and power in our lives.
Right.
We're obviously called to listen and obey. We're called to worship him. And if we can use the tool to worship him to the glory of him, then sure. But if we too often get sucked into that rabbit hole that is the soda addiction, which I thought was a great metaphor, because I'm like, it's probably more like cigarettes, but then I couldn't find a redeeming value in cigarettes. And there is, at least can be, a redeeming value in soda or coffee or, something like that. Right. And then I immediately felt convicted because I drink way too much coffee, but that's okay. No, I think that's a solid metaphor. And then an expansion on not only just that metaphor, but then going into, the hammer in a 4-year-old's hands, I thought was a great way to picture that too, because truly a bunch of these algorithms, like, we don't even know the unintended consequences downline. We already are measuring the travesty that it's creating, right? We can already measure that. So just like you throw a hammer to a 2-year-old or whatever, a 4-year-old that's strong enough to swing it, but has no frame of doing it appropriately, and you don't give any instruction, and it's like, well, then just stuff is going to get destroyed. Things are going to be injured, to include themselves. And we have, we have nobody to blame but ourselves. It's such a brutal take on it. And so, and I will ask you, but I want to ask about time and superabundance really quick though. But I do want to go into, I'm guessing if you have the attention cultivation agency, then maybe you can give us some handles from which we can turn it back into a tool, create boundaries, keep us from ourselves, right? Keep us from our rebellious proclivities. Like, truly, if we're, that's human issue, right? Is we're being non-human in our fallen nature. And so of course we're going to rebel against God. Of course we're going to get sucked into these rabbit holes, but we don't have to be. So, but before I get into that, time, because you talked about paying attention, you talked about time, presence with your father, talked about time sucks on, and you were specifically kind of juxtaposing this information age meets attention age. And I think a through line, even into and we can go back to the industrial age and the Bronze Age and so on and so forth. So, like, all the way back, it seems, information age was about being able to acquire it, being able to store it, being able to redistribute it or distribute it in some way, shape, or form. What about time? Because it seems to me that time, obviously, it takes time to learn stuff. It takes time to store stuff. It takes time to pay attention, to not pay attention, right? It pulls our time. And so it seems to me that the value through line through it all is time. And what we were, the good sides of all of those ages is that we were able to garner more time, create more time, right? Which allows for more creativity, which allows for greater abilities to produce things. And there's a bunch of economists and economics and stuff that talk about this as a separate thing from, supply and demand and the normal economic stuff. but I was just wondering if you knew or heard of the idea of superabundance, and that ultimately, good, bad, and different, if it's leading us towards a new innovative way in which we can interact with the world around us and each other, by giving us more time, it's going to give us more value. And right now we're in a pretty roughshod realm, even though we've saved a bunch of time, right? Now we can do things like podcasts, whereas not but 100, 200 years ago, now you and I would be out working in the fields, like harvesting,
Right.
or we'd be the upper elite, and somebody else would still be harvesting. And then we would be studying a book, right? And writing on a piece of handwriting on a piece of paper. Well, that stuff takes a ton of time. Now we've got a lot more time. So I'm just wondering if you see that as a good through line, and then what time and superabundance might mean. And so this is a couple of questions, I apologize, for this age of attention.
Lots to unpack there, but short answer, I agree. I think the time through line, as you put it, is good, and that applies. Like, let's go back a little bit to the agricultural era, like you said. Mm-hmm. People were the baseline was the amount of time they had in the day to do the work on the farm, mm-hmm. and then the amount of time they had in the planting, cultivating, and then harvesting seasons, mm-hmm. before it got to winter, where there was an amount of time where they had to have enough stores stored up so they could live throughout the winter. Into let's skip to the industrial age, where now we're in factories. You and I would be working in a factory producing a widget or a piece of paper or whatever it is, and now we are selling our time to the business, who is using our time to insert widget to the stamp, take widget out of stamp, and then do that for the rest of the day. And it was based on how many hours can I have this machine going. So how many humans do I need to put in the machine to make it work? So based on time. You mentioned, so then in the information age too, okay, cool. I go from having to store all the information in the library, and now if I want to go grab a piece of information, I have to go physically to the library, ask the librarian, or browse the books until I get to the right section, and then start picking out books and then flipping through and reading until I find the piece of information that I want. And that takes a significant amount of my time. And the information age, which brought computers. And so now I'm able to store all that information on the computers and make it searchable. Cool. Now, instead of spending all that time, I can just Google it and I find what I need right away. And so I saved myself a lot of time, but now my employer expects me to produce even more, because instead of having to run to the library and sort through books for an hour to find the piece of information I need, I can get that in 15 minutes on Google. Yeah. And so now they're gonna ask me to produce more for my same unit of time. And in the attention age / in this AI revolution age, where I can say, I need to think of a name for this event. ChatGPT, give me 10 examples of a name for this type of event that includes this, that, and the other. And it comes up with 10 names that are maybe not amazing, but at least get me pointed in the right direction, so that 5 minutes later I can maybe put 2 of them together and boom, I've got a really good name. Or I learn how to interact and send it another post. So something that would have taken me, 30 minutes to come up with a witty name by going around and asking a bunch of other people and everything, can take me 3 minutes interacting with one of these large language models. But now my employer is going to expect me to replicate that from that. So, and it doesn't matter if it's me or my 4-year-old or Elon Musk. We all are tied down to the 24 hours a day, and we've all heard this, in the personal development realm. But time is the most valuable resource, because that's what is expiring in a certain amount of time, at a certain age, or whenever the Lord decides to take us. Now, the question is, how do we optimize for that time? And that's where the attention, the requirement for cultivating my attention and making sure that I'm always that I'm present where I need to be present. Do I sit here and interact with a social media or an AI, or watch a, even if it's good, even if it's an educational video on doing something, like maybe I'll get Aaron Guyett to teach me how to do the rope workouts.
Yeah.
Or should I be rolling around on the floor with my children who are playing football with each other, quote unquote, and are like, Daddy, come play football with me. I promise you, next week, I will not remember whatever I absorbed, whatever I didn't even absorb, whatever glanced off my eyeballs on social media or on whatever training video it was. But I can guarantee you, next week, I will remember rolling around on the floor playing with my kids. And I guarantee they will remember that too.
Yeah.
So I think it's the tough choice, though, because the easy choice is just sitting here having things glance off my eyeballs. And that's what makes it tough. We're humans, and like Adam and Eve, why grab from all of this abundance right around here when I can beeline it for the tree of good and evil, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and just grab that fruit and eat it?
Yeah.
We're humans. We are drawn to what is probably not healthy for us.
Yeah.
And that's from the very beginning.
Yeah. And I think that, to me, it seems, and I'm seeing it more and more, it's like, no, that's an active rebellion against, who we are and whose we are. Right. Yes. And if we do have allegiance to Christ as Lord, if he truly is Lord, then that means he's Lord over our families, over our minutes of the day, right? Every aspect, heaven and earth, right? He said, I've been given authority over heaven and earth, not just heaven, right? In this spiritual, ethereal sense, like earth to the physical aspects of this, the time and space aspects of this. Yeah. And so, I was just curious on that. Because the idea is, if you have more time, that super abundance, and I believe that this is how God creates things. Like we're seeing that more and more and more comes. Like, yes, we might have finite amounts of this or finite amounts of that, but we're finding ways to expand the use of that and not need as much of it. And there is, it seems to me, this sort of law of superabundance. And obviously there is obvious signs of that in the evil realm too, because there's this superabundance of evil as we try to find the bottom of the worst of the worst on social media or on your phone or on your screen, right? That's endless as well. And that will definitely suck us down a rabbit hole that is clear and obvious rebellion against what God is calling us to do. And if we're living in accordance with, God and his authority, then we're living well to the glory of God. And even if we aren't blessed in a worldly sense, we're blessed, period. Right.
Yes.
And so maybe with this attention cultivation agency, maybe you can help give a couple of pointers and then point us in the right direction to get more of these steps or handles or ways in which we can kind of figure out, okay, yes, I should wrestle with my kids. Okay, I'm getting sucked into this. How can you help me, Wes? Help me out, please. I need help.
Well, I'll tell you, this is something that it's a problem that's never going to go away, because I think, going back to the superabundance of time, back in, it was, I think, post World War II and pre Cold War era, the U.S. government said that in the turn of the millennium, in the 2000s, people are going to be working 2 days a week and for only 4 hours a day, because there's going to be so much technology out there to save our time that we won't need to work, and we'll be able to produce and just, live in our abundance. No, that's never going to happen. That's against human nature, because part of the curse, we are built to work. We have been cursed to work. And so we will find ways. The boss man will find more work for us to do. I mean, find a billionaire who's not doing things probably more rigorously than most high achievers. That's one of the reasons that they got there, yes, but they also have the opportunity for ultimate time abundance, and they don't take it. They choose to, whether it's continuing their businesses or whether it's doing work for the good of humanity, it doesn't matter. They're finding things to do to fill their time, and so they're not just,
that's right,
spending time on the couch with their kids reading or whatever it is that they could be doing. They do a lot of leisure, but I would say it's not a super abundance amount of leisure. So yeah, what are some things that we can do? Kind of going back to the Cal Newport conversation of setting up the environment, I think we're human and we take cues from our environment, and it's our environment that drives a lot of the decision making and the habits that we do on a day-to-day, hour-to-hour, minute-to-minute basis. When I was just TDY, which means I was on a trip with work for just a week, and I have a lot of really positive systems built up in my life, but I go TDY, and it doesn't matter if prior to going TDY, if I sit down and write down what things I'm going to do and what work I want to get done with my comparative superabundance of time, when I don't have to worry about, putting the kids to bed and mowing the lawn, or, fixing whatever's broken in the garage, or whatever it is. And still, part of it is it's all my environment. The guys are like, hey, we're going to dinner. I'm like, yes, I do want to go to dinner, and that's now a 2-hour event. And I'm sitting down to get some work done on the computer, and it's like, oh yeah, I should throw on some YouTube music or whatever, and boom, I'm now in the YouTube death scroll of watching SNL or whatever it is. And it doesn't work, because it's not the environment in which I have built positive habits, and positive habits around everything from the food that I'm eating to the bedtime routines of getting to bed early so that I can wake up early and get a good start on my day, wake up early so I can work out. There's plenty of things, but there's plenty of things around social media and around preserving our attention too. I would submit that since we are human and our mind is inside of our bodies, and our spirit and the Lord, the Holy Spirit, resides inside of our bodies, everything is all interconnected. You can't expect to go, run a whole bunch over the summer and you're going to lose all of your weight, because your diet is a huge impact on your weight. Just like you, through eating, you probably could get your weight down, but it's not going to be healthy weight loss necessarily. And you're not going to be a, healthy and fit individual. So you can't just turn one lever and expect everything else to go well. Just like I can't give you a tip on specifically, cultivating your mind and making sure that you're protecting your mind from the hooks of social media and the cell phone and everything. So it is a whole environment thing, but we're also physical creatures. So I think a lot of it is tough when you get into the digital, because we're not wired. And honestly, like, I mean, you and I, cell phones have become a thing in our lifetime. Mm-hmm. And so we, unlike my daughters, did not grow up being in that type of environment. Mm-hmm. Anyway, what I'm getting at is design your lifestyle, and most of it is in the home, because that's a lot of the time that is that either they get sucked into social media or whatever it is. But you have to design the environment. So I don't sleep with the cell phone on my nightstand next to my bed, because it's way too close. There's the potential for just grabbing it and going and then getting lost in social media or whatever it is always going to be there. So I need to physically leave it somewhere else. Just like, and I'm not always good at this, when I get home from work, I get changed. My intent is to leave the cell phone in my room and then go be with the family. Because if my phone is in my pocket, then I'm going to check it. Yeah. And if my phone is not in the pocket, I can't check it, because it is physically not with me. It is physically in the other room. There's plenty of studies that have gone into psychology of just even having the cell phone with you, and even if it's not notifying you. And then for one other tip, on my cell phone, I have 0 like physical notifications except for a phone call. A phone call is the only thing that causes my cell phone to vibrate. And so when
we're on that same page.
when I get a text message, I don't know until I actually turn on the screen to look at it.
Yeah.
And when I get a new email, or when I get a friend request, or somebody liked the photo that I didn't post on social media, because I don't post anything on social media typically, I don't get notified. And when I don't get notified, that means I am not pulling out my cell phone in the middle of a conversation, or I'm not pulling out my cell phone in the middle of working on a project and looking at it and then getting sucked into the 6 to 9 other different notifications or booms and or red dots, or you have 4 unread whatevers.
Yep.
That has been the single biggest kind of environmental setup habit for me personally for preserving my attention. Additionally, there's only a certain amount of apps that are allowed to put a banner notification on the home screen of my phone.
Yeah.
Social media is not allowed to. Social media is there's all of the social media settings that I can turn off to not notify me of things are turned off.
Yeah.
There's literally nothing except for, hey, your password is expiring, or like some system level, actual maintenance to the account.
Yeah.
Anything that's quote unquote frivolous, I do not know about. I don't know about emails. I have to physically open the email app in order to see if I have new emails. And trust me, I check my email enough for the entire day.
I
know. Times that I do.
The misnomer that, oh, you're going to miss something or whatever is exactly the trap that we got put into. That email was supposed to solve anyway. So
if somebody needs to get a hold of you, they should call you.
Yeah.
They should not email you. If it's urgent, it should not be an email, or it should be followed up with, hey, I sent you an email. You need to go take care of this now.
That's right. Yeah.
So setting up your physical environment and then setting up your digital environment to reduce the amount of touches that are possible is the biggest thing. I mean, in an age where I've got the stat and I don't know what it is, but we open our cell phone like 200 plus times every single day, and we touch our cell phone way more than that. And if I can reduce that down to any number less than that, but I mean, down into the, couple times an hour type of time frame, then I'm winning. And if I can physically 100%. Set up the environment, I mean, I like to have a clean environment. If I can set up my environment such that there's no physical distractions that are trying to grab my time, because it's not always just the cell phone. It's the piece of paper here that I'm like, oh yeah, I need to go do that, or the whatever, oh, I need to go put this away, or oh, I need to fold the laundry. For me, keeping a clean environment is beneficial to keeping my attention pointed to wherever I need it to be in that moment.
Yeah. I think, man, all of that stuff is so good. I want to finish with obviously leaders of leaders. Again, we believe that Jesus Christ is the leader of all leaders. We believe discipleship in Christ, and then getting others to disciple in Christ. So discipling others to disciple in Christ is going to be the fastest way to think. And I'll say this: think generationally. Right. Not even just think covenantally, but that too, but think generationally. So yeah, maybe I can't completely save, like we said at the very beginning, oh, you're, fighting an uphill battle.
Right.
And maybe I don't win it when I'm alive, but I set the stage in which my next generation or the generation after is able to win that battle. And so that being said, is there one sort of piece of advice, one thing that you would say, one quote, one whatever, insight, observation, up to that leader that is trying to lead other leaders, develop the next generation, to develop the next generation of leaders and disciples in that realm? Is there one thing? Is there something that you have that you're like, okay, I can't get off of this podcast without at least, sharing this piece of advice that was given to me, or this thing that I read, or this thing that I observed or understood?
For me, and part of this is, I think, just my personality, but for me, the biggest thing is living. People, you can listen to what I say and that's all fine, but then you're like, what? Okay, yeah, but how does he actually live? And when I can, just the other day, I made a pact with myself that whenever somebody came over to my desk at work to start talking to me, I would stand up and turn and face them, partially because, pay 100% focus on the person or task at hand. In this case, it went from the task to the person. Mm-hmm. Multiple reasons in there, to include if I stand up and physically push away from the work, they're less likely to just keep bothering me. Mm-hmm. But just the other day, somebody walked over and started talking to me, and so I turned and then I stood up and faced them, and he was like, "Oh, you don't have to stand up." And I was like, "No, I always stand up whenever I'm talking to people." And that made him, that kind of like, it was like, "Oh, wow, there's something different about this guy that is unlike everybody else." And the way that he then started interacting with me was so much more professional and succinct and less, frivolous. Not that there's a time and place for sure, office talk, but when I'm in the middle of a project, I want to get back to my project. So, tell me what you need to tell me, and then let's move on. When we meet up at the watering hole later, then we can talk about Friday nights, whatever it was. But living in a way that is, I mean, we're charging uphill when everybody else is going downhill. Yeah. So while we're charging uphill, don't just put your head down and kind of hide as you're, slowly trudging going uphill. Be different. Make people stop and ask you why you are so different, because boom, then that opens up the conversation, and I can be like, because of this, because I'm doing this with my kids because I want to train them up to be followers of Christ, and I need to exemplify that to them and to you, but I don't have to say that part. Yeah. And just let it go from there, and people will be curious. We're humans, we're curious. Yeah. I found, for me, that is far more effective than, hey dude, you should stop drinking energy drinks because I found the study, blah 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 blah. That never works. They're going to turn around and go open another energy drink. Yeah. It's the same thing with evangelism. It's the same thing with me trying to tell you that, hey, we need to rein in our use of social media because it's affecting our way, the way that we are paying attention to our surroundings and our work and our family and our faith. I mean, what does God want? God doesn't need us to pray to him because he doesn't know what's wrong and what's going on in my life. He needs me to pray so that I am focusing on him and on my relationship with him. So that I am paying attention to God and to living in a way that's glorifying to him. He doesn't need me to pray. That's right. Jesus didn't need to pray because God needed that information that Jesus was praying. Yeah. Jesus prayed because Jesus needed to pray, and because Jesus needed to teach his disciples how to pray, and because Jesus needed to be talking to God, so that in him talking to God and saying, Lord, if you will take this cup, that he in his mind and in his body can accept the trial and the challenge that he was about to go through, and can fully internalize exactly why he was doing it. That is why he's God. He doesn't need us. We're just just little humans running around on the earth trying to find hammers to go destroy things.
That's good, Wes. So where can people find you?
Where can people find me? I'll be slow to respond on social media. So I do check my LinkedIn periodically, but very infrequently. The best place is probably on my website, weswoodhouse.com. And you can sign up to have a conversation, or LinkedIn. If you send me a message, that's great too.
Cool, man. Thank you so much for coming on the show, sharing your wisdom, sharing your insights. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on, Aaron. I appreciate it. It was a great time.